And hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Kent Holste on YouTube and Facebook and all my other social media accounts. Today, I got a special interview again, second time having a video interview, this time with a great sportscaster from the Flathead Valley in Montana, Anthony Nachreiner, and he has an amazing history within sports. Tell me a little bit of your history and where you began and what led you to the Flathead.
Well, Kent, I appreciate you having me on your podcast, man. Really appreciate it. And thanks for all the kind words. For me, where it began was in Melbourne, Florida. The funny part is like, if you were to ask me at 15 years old what I wanted to do, I had no idea. But then getting into TV production, getting into that class in high school, I was scared to death. Like, all I ever wanted to do was just, all right, I'm going to operate the camera. That's all I'm going to do. I don't want to be in front of it. But then I got in front of it, and I started doing a show called Touchdown Brevard, and did some BPS News, which was Brevard Public Schools at the time, and just got really into it and really interested, and found out what I wanted to do, and then led me to college, where I went to Wisconsin Lutheran, which is based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and the reason why I wanted to go there was I figured, you know what, you got the Bucks, the Packers aren't that far, the Brewers are there. I just thought, you know what, sports broadcasting, there's got to be a ton of internships, and that was the case. I got opportunities at different radio stations, different formats. So for me, that was what was really cool about it. Was I just wanted to get into that way, because I thought, for me, when it came to the school, like, I need more of the internships. I need more of the on-hand learning than anything, and that's what I ended up doing. And after I got done, went back to Florida, got my first start, which was not paid. And it was with the Friday Night Locker Room and Steve Wilson and Orville Susong. And those guys were great. They were great mentors for me to teach me play-by-play, because at the time, all I'd ever done is TV production. I had never done play-by-play for the radio or anything like that. So to get that opportunity on radio, and then I hooked up with the Mark Moses show, and then my good friend Mark Moses, he gave me a shot as a part-time producer for him, and that's how I got involved, and even more so in talk radio. So it's kind of funny. I went TV, then radio, and then now I got my own sports talk show, and I've had for the last 4 years, and it's been great fun. And the funny part is if you would have told me in February of 2016 where Kalispell, Montana was on a map, I wouldn't be able to tell you. But then August, I got a phone call in July. I applied to this job in Montana, and I decided to take an opportunity, because my college professor gave me a great piece of advice, and she said, if you really want to work in media and you want to work in business and you're trying to find your way up and be successful, you're going to live places you've never heard of before. And I thought, you know what? Never heard of Kalispell. Let's give this thing a shot. And the last 4 years have been great. I'm looking forward to hopefully this season for high school sports, because that's where I kind of spend a lot of my focus. Because like I said, Flathead Valley and Kalispell, they love their high school sports. It kind of gives you that small town feeling that you see in Americana, and they really do live by it. I mean, fans for Flathead, the Glaciers, the Columbia Falls, the Big Forks, the Whitefish, even Eureka's, they all love their high school football. They all love their high school basketball. They love their high school sports. So I spent a lot of time in that. And, for me, when I was in high school, we didn't get a lot of love in my career. So I thought, you know what? I want to do this because I also want to represent the kids that feel like maybe they don't get a lot of love, because we all know that the great players, the great athletes, they get a ton of media attention. But how about some of the kids that don't? And so that's what kind of really drives me as well. And I love being up here. It's been fantastic. And I've learned quite a bit, especially the Montana State rivalry. How serious is that? Like, I thought, Florida State was pretty serious. Well, I think Montana State, they're feisty.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I think the funny thing about that, though, is no matter where you go in the United States, you'll run into people that are either a Bobcat or a Grizz. And I found that out all the way in New Hampshire. I found that out in Maine, even in Vermont. There's Grizz and Cat fans all over the place.
Yeah.
So
and that's the cool part about it. That's one of the coolest things I learned, because like there's not even like a little bit like I kind of like the Grizz and I like the Bobcats. No, it's either you like the Bobcats or you like the Grizz.
yeah, that's how the conversation is. In fact, I work at an office supply chain, and someone came in with a 406 number, and I was like, wait a second, are you a Cat or a Grizz? And they knew immediately what I was talking about. And it's funny how many people say which one, and it's pretty even. And that tells you just the significance of that rival within the state. So let's talk about a little bit of sports besides the local area. I know you're a huge Bucks fan.
Yep.
And within the NFL, this is a big season for your team, because not only do they have King Brady, but they also have the Gronk, and especially they're a stacked team already with two of the most impressive players from last season. As far as this season goes, you got to be pretty excited.
I'm thrilled. I don't even think excited is enough of the word. I mean, my dad and I are huge Bucks fans. My whole family's huge Bucks fans. My family's been season ticket holders, and we've been Bucks fans since day one. My grandfather had season tickets from 76 to about 82, 83, and we've just been huge Bucks fans. And I cannot remember a more exciting time. Like, I mean, even when you go back to the 2002 year, when we won the Super Bowl, there was no guarantee that we even thought we'd be in the conversation. We were hoping we would be. We thought, hey, Gruden's going to give us enough offense. We got enough defense here. But again, it was always like, okay, but when we get to the playoffs, are we going to choke it away? Are we going to lose to Philadelphia and Donovan McNabb again? So that was always the interesting part. And so there wasn't that much time, because it was, all right, we know we can win games. Can we win the postseason? Now, just for me, I still have a hard time believing that we've got possibly the greatest of all time taking up snaps under center in a Buccaneers uniform. Like, they released his pictures, like 41 of them. I know some people were annoyed. I wasn't. I couldn't get enough. Give me 82 pictures of Tom Brady in Buccaneer colors, and I'm glad and here's the better part about this, we're out of those digital uniforms. I am so happy we're back to our modern look. I have said this from day one, Tampa Bay, don't ever change again. Leave those numbers alone. Leave that jersey combo alone. The only thing we need to add, and when the NFL allows us, is allow us that creamsicle chance when we can go back to a retro game. But other than that, don't ever change. But yeah, Brady in that red, the white, the pewter. I love the pewter look. That's fantastic. They're just, for Bucks fans, it feels like after a decade of losing, you go back the last decade, like the NFC South used to be a division that nobody repeated. Well, in the last decade, the Saints have won it 4 times, the Falcons 3, the Panthers 3. The Bucks didn't win one division title, and obviously that explains a lot, because that's why we've been down in towards the bottom of the division. But just because we've been so bad recently, I think that just adds to the excitement, because now we're all of a sudden going from, hey, we're just hoping we can have a winning season, maybe be in the playoff competition or conversation, I should say. Now all of a sudden, holy crap, we could, NFC title game's not out of reach here. Possibly the Super Bowl. We've got the players, as you just talked about. Adding Gronk is just icing on the cake. I mean, you had Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Cameron Brate, O.J. Howard, the weapons Brady has. And then at the same time, too, like when Tristan Wirfs falls to Tampa in the draft, we're like, all of a sudden, our offensive line, I mean, as long as he pans out, stays healthy, obviously, but just the overall excitement, I can't overstate just how much I think Bucks fans are just thrilled to have a team that's back to being competitive, back to being in the conversation. When, you go back to the early 2000s, the Buccaneers were in that conversation. They were being talked about. All right, hey, Tampa Bay, they got the defense. They're going to win ball games. Expect them to be. Just, are they going to have enough offense? Well, now, hey, I think deep playoff run will be great. I'm not going to go as far as to say we should expect a Super Bowl, because, for one, it being in Tampa, that's a huge long shot. But if we can get to the playoffs, have a winning record, I'm happy.
Well, what do you think? You always talk top 10, top 5, top 4 teams for this season. Obviously, the Chiefs have a great chance of making another run out at it. I think personally, the Raiders they have a good chance just by their draft picks that they made. They had pretty impressive picks, actually, I think. And then obviously the Bucks, I think, are going to be one of the top. But who do you think that other fourth team would be?
That's tough. I mean, any kind of other Chiefs, the Raiders a little bit, us, and the 49ers aren't going to go anywhere. They just kind of reloaded without having to pay a whole lot of money. So the 49ers are in that conversation. I think the Seahawks are in the conversation. I think the NFC, you can make a case for a number of teams. In the AFC, now that Brady's out of New England, you just don't know what you're going to get with the Patriots. I feel like it's the Chiefs division or Chiefs conference really to lose, because who do you trust in the AFC at this point? Denver, they have a lot of promise, but I don't. For Tampa Bay fans, Jameis Winston, we've been having a lot of promise for the last 5 years that hasn't panned out. Raiders, again, a lot of promise, but no guarantees. Chargers, a lot of promise, no guarantees. I look at the AFC South. Does anybody scare you in the AFC South? Because they don't. I can't think of anybody. Titans don't scare me.
I can't think of any.
I mean, the only time I would get scared is if I actually had to be in front of Derrick Henry and he was already rolling downhill. That would scare me. But other than that, there's just nobody that really puts fear into me in the AFC unless it's the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think that fourth team has to come out of the NFC. Green Bay, I don't trust, just simply because they didn't do enough to fix their defense to stop from being run over. And then I look at the NFC least, the Dallas Cowboys. All right, it sounds like they're perhaps going to have their quarterback situation resolved, at least for this season with Dak Prescott. But they look it, but can they actually do it? That's a whole nother question. I don't trust the Eagles. Like I said, I just don't trust anybody out of the NFC least. And then, like I said, the South has just been so good. You know, you can make an argument outside of the Carolina Panthers. You can make an argument for the Falcons because they still have the offense. They still have the receivers to be able to make plays. If they can just get their defense to just make enough plays. And then the Saints, obviously, we know what they've done. So, I mean, like I said, there's two teams, potentially three right there for the playoffs when you look at the Falcons, the Bucks, and the Saints. So, for me, that fourth team probably is the 49ers to go with it. But you can make a case for a number of teams in the NFC. I don't think you can do that for the AFC.
So with all the stuff that's going on with the virus that's going on, obviously we've seen a lot of pro sports get affected. We've seen a horrible picture and image set by the Major League Baseball players. I think that is a huge hit. As a fan, I'm kind of disappointed. A lot of it's greed. I mean, you look at NFL, you look at NBA, NHL, they're all wanting to play. And that's encouraging. But for baseball, man, it's a killer. But let's put that aside. How do you think this is going to affect the football season with fans, the loss of income as far as revenue, with traveling of fans? This got to hurt the league quite a bit.
Well, I think it depends, because right now the NFL hasn't had to make that decision yet. I think that's really what's important here. The NFL has been successful because they haven't had to make any decision, unlike the other three major sports. Because their season, we're still getting to that point. We're still a month out from training camp to this point. And I think what's really important too is, I think, as we see, and again, I don't want to wish ill on anyone. I hope all the players, whether it be college or the pros that have been diagnosed with the virus, hopefully they all recover. Hopefully they all get through and they're all at 100% afterwards and they don't have any residual effects. But I think that's ultimately going to tell us, because I think what happens to these players could potentially tell us whether or not we're really going to have a season. Because I think all the news that we saw on Friday with the positive tests, I think it starts to bring back the doubt that perhaps maybe we won't have a season. Because again, we all knew that we were going to see positive tests. It was not a question of if, it was a question of when. This virus wasn't going anywhere. But how does it get handled? How do players come back from it? Do we see a lot of players come back healthy? Do we see them recover? How long? I think all of those questions are going to need to be answered. And I think going forward, okay, do we see more tests? What happens if we have an outbreak on one team? How does that affect them? So I think there's a lot that's still left to be played, especially for the NFL. But I think what they're all hoping for is by the time we get to August, perhaps we'll have a better idea, just like we've had every single day we've had this virus. We're learning more. We're getting more things in the way of, okay, what can we find as a remedy? I know I've heard reports, again, I don't know if it's going to be true or not, but they've said that perhaps maybe we can have a vaccine by early 2021. If that's the case, that's really optimistic. But like I said, I think it really just depends on how the leagues handle positive tests and how these players respond. Because, like I said, I can't imagine, a player losing their life to this and then trying to sit there and say, okay, let's try and play football. I don't think that's going to be a winning argument. So I think really it comes down to how does the league handle this going forward, and how do players recover from it? Because if they don't, I don't think we're going to have a season. And I don't want to be negative Nancy here, but I feel like ultimately we knew that was going to be the case. We're going to have to see how it plays.
Well, do you think that the NFL could take maybe a look at different options for helmet styles for protection? Kind of like we're looking at NASCAR. A lot of it is safe because those pit guys always wear their helmets anyways that are full face covered. Could the NFL design a helmet that potentially could have that same type of protection? Maybe that could make a difference.
It could. Unfortunately, though, but this depends on the NFL. I like your point, but this depends on the NFL, because have they been already looking at that possibility? Because if they're just now starting to look at that possibility, that might be too little too late. They may or should have been looking at that possibility earlier at, changing the helmet, changing how they do that. Because my concern is, and again, not knocking NASCAR crews, because those guys deal with temperatures I wouldn't want to deal with, and pace I don't want to deal with. But at the same time, the NFL, you're constantly running. So if a receiver has all that, can he breathe? Is he going to be able to breathe? Is he going to be able to, does he have to stop? Those would be questions. I do look at the alternatives. I look at the KBO. They have done fine, or I don't want to say done fine, but they've played games without fans. So if that's the case, then I think my dad's a season ticket holder, and I don't want him to not be able to go to games. I know a lot of Bucks fans that are season ticket holders that want to be able to go to games. But if that's the alternative to being able to at least have games, I think that's definitely an option that has to be considered. I think the NFL. I think the important part is constantly temperature monitoring. I mean, when I look at, and I've talked to, just again, bringing it back to the local point here, because we got Legion baseball going on here in Montana. So we have a high school sport, essentially, even though it's not really a high school, it's not affiliated with high schools. We have baseball being played. And one of the things they're doing constantly every single day is a temperature check. And so, so far, things have been good, and we want to keep it that way. But I think that's ultimately going to be the biggest thing, is like every single day. All right, what's the temperature? Hey, how's this person doing? I like some of the things that the NFL did with expanding the practice squads. Hopefully they do that permanently. I like to see them go to 16 permanently. But I think the NFL will definitely invest in alternatives. And if they can come up with a helmet that allows players to breathe and it doesn't alter their breathing and at the same time does protect them, I'm all for it. Like I said, I'm all for alternatives. I think that's the biggest thing until we get a vaccine. We have to be creative. We have to have alternatives. We have to look at, okay, we're not going to have the sport we normally know because of this. So we need to be able to look, if we want to have sports played, have alternatives available.
Well, let's move back to the Flathead, sticking with football. Flathead has always had some amazing football players that have somehow made it into the NFL. There was McFarland, who was before your time, made it into the NFL for a little bit. And then a kid that was a year ahead of me, Lex Hilliard, who did a few great years with the Dolphins, then got to the Patriots, and then ended the career with the New York Jets. And, of course, our local hero, I think we can call him, Brock Osweiler.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Brock and what he's done for Flathead. It made local news about the amazing donation that he made to the high school's weight room and the huge transition. I went to Flathead and that weight room was sparse, not impressive, and It was kind of a joke. But from the pictures I saw, I guess the pictures that were in the Daily Interlake did no justice from what I understand. I guess it is top notch. It is better than a lot of the universities' workout facilities. From what you've seen, for people that aren't from the Flathead, tell a little bit what Brock has done for not only Flathead football, but to the high school as well.
I think the great thing is when you talk about it, is that Brock's willing to give back. And I think a big part of that is also former head coach Kyle Sampson's relationship with Brock during his playing days. Kyle keeping him updated. I mean, a couple of years ago, Flathead making the state title run that they did. I think that helps. And I think Brock at the same time, deep down, loves the Flathead, loves the Braves, loves his high school. I think that's a part of it, and I think he wanted to give back. And from what I can tell, and I've had a couple conversations with Brock. He came here last year for the golf tournament and got a chance to chat with him for a little bit. And the biggest takeaway that I have from him is that he loves to give back. He does not like to make anything about himself. He loves to talk about the people that helped him. And so Brock is just a really kind, cool guy, down to earth. And like I said, he wanted to help out his alma mater, and because he had that opportunity. And so that weight room really is terrific. It's better than I think some of the weight rooms in the Frontier. Now, if you haven't, I don't know if people want to look it up, but if they want to, the Washington Grizzly Champion Center is phenomenal. That's one heck of a facility. I know the Bobcats are building a brand new one, but the facility that Brock gave the Flathead Braves is a high school, top notch, probably the best one in all of AA, probably the best one in the entire high school football realm, and probably better than some of the frontier schools in the NAIA. So, I mean, you're talking about you got in that weight room now two separate parts of that weight room, because it's not a giant square. It's like not just an easy area.
It was the old lunchroom when I was
Right.
there in high school. So.
And you got like a hallway that's like a corner, so that's cut to some turf, and then you've got like a 40-yard turf on the other side, and I think the biggest thing is the multi-use racks. So it's like you can change the rack from, because like I remember this, and even in my old high school days, you had a squat rack, and then you had your deadlift platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now these multi-use racks that they have, they can turn it into a squat rack if they need to, a bench if they need to, or it can be a deadlift or a power clean or hang clean lift station. So now you can literally have these groups of kids. They can do all these different exercises, and it's not like you have to, go here, and waste time by moving. So it's phenomenal. The platforms and the pads, they redid the padding. They had to even up the floors as well, and so that was something that perhaps maybe not a lot of people know. You had to kind of set the floor and reset the padding, so make everything level and make everything even as well, and that was also a part of it. So like I said, it was no small undertaking to enhance that facility that definitely needed enhancing.
Was there a price tag on that, or is that kind of a hush hush?
I don't know. I don't think I ever did get an official number, but I do believe Brock at least was some millions. Let's put it that way, of redoing that facility. So again, Brock Osweiler was so huge in helping out and donating the stuff. He came in with a couple other, I believe it was a strength and conditioning coach from Denver, and they kind of helped set it up and put it together and kind of put the pieces in place. So like I said, I don't know what the official price tag was. I won't even guess. But like I said, that was the great thing about it, is Brock made it happen. And like I said, if you have a chance to see the pictures, go take a look at them, because it is the Brock Osweiler Performance Center. The really cool part is there's a huge mural of Brock, and I can't remember exactly what it says, but I know there's pictures of it too. But it just really is cool. And like I said, it really is a performance center. I mean, that's how cool it is. And I think it's going to help that program. Not, we talk about just football. It's not going to just help football. It's going to help the basketball teams. It's going to help the soccer teams, the wrestling teams, the spring and track athletes. I mean, this. How big is track and field in Montana? That's going to be a huge help for them.
Yeah. And it's amazing. I think the Flathead, just in itself, has always put out amazing quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Before your time, there was the same year as Lex Hilliard, there was a quarterback, Mike Riley. He is a quarterback, or he was actually an MVP for the Canadian Football League, I believe.
The Edmonton Eskimos. Yeah. And I can't think of who he's with now. He just signed a big deal with the Canadian Football League with another team, because he's not with Edmonton anymore. And I can't think of it, but yeah, Mike, another great quarterback.
it just shows you just the strengths. And what's sad though is, unfortunately, we can't say we have a lot of state championships, but we came so close, and a lot of those years was CMR. They were a dominant force for many years, and I don't know how they are now, but I think historically, just Great Falls in general has always had powerhouse football teams.
You're right. It was funny. I did, looking back at the decades, you look at CMR and Great Falls. Great Falls dominated in the 70s. You could see where CMR was graduating up to that point in the 80s, and they really took off in the 80s. But between CMR and Capital's another one. They dominated the 90s. I think they had, 7 state championship appearances in the, no, I'm sorry, 2000s. 2000s, they had 7. I think they won 5 of them in the 2000s. So Capital's another one that was really dominant. This decade, Bozeman was really good and really dominant this past decade. Like I said, Flathead's been there, and they've been in the conversation. They've had really good football players just a couple of years ago, and just so close to winning a state championship, because the last one, like you said, unfortunately has been a while, since 1970. Was the last time. And you look at Flathead. Flathead dominated in the 50s and the early 60s in football, but have not had that same success. And I think, one result of why it's been a little bit even more challenging is because of the split. Obviously, now they're 2 high schools, Glacier and Flathead. And in the last couple of years, that rivalry's kind of balanced out, which is great. I think that works well. But like I said, I think it's just shown it's getting harder and harder in the AA, in the Montana anyway, to win. And that's something else I want to kind of say too, Kent. Being from Florida, I knew high school football was king. Athletes all the time going to Florida State. I got to say, when I got to Montana, I wasn't sure what to expect. I figured you guys had some horses, and some hogs up front. But I'll tell you what, the brand of football, is the best Montana team going to go down and beat, Miami Northwestern or Booker T? Probably not, just because they don't have that many athletes.
Yep.
But I'll tell you what, I think the Montana teams could definitely win some football games against some Texas schools, against some Florida schools, because there are some really great athletes up here, and there's some really great football teams.
So as far as this football season goes, obviously, I said I'm a proud Brave. My daughter, I said on another podcast, was in the area for Glacier, but luckily she got approved to go to Flathead. So good. I got a big smile on my face for that. But, that's the nice thing is, you should have seen it here when Flathead was the only high school, jam-packed. It was just bad. But the one thing I always wanted to see was 2 high schools and that competition that it would have between the both. And like you said, we've seen it. And I think what's been impressive is Glacier has been given a run for the money on Flathead's part, when Flathead has always been that dominant force in the valley. And what do you think about Flathead versus Glacier this year from what's perspective?
Well, I think the biggest thing is I think for Flathead, they've graduated so many seniors over the last 2 seasons that, and you see this all the time with high school, I think what you're seeing is a little bit of a youth movement. Now, again, I don't know. I haven't had a chance to completely chat with Coach Matt Upham now about his roster just yet, but I think for Flathead, there's going to be some youth to this football team. They've got some really promising young football players that are going to be working their way up. I think for Glacier, they're a team that they've got a lot of guys coming back. They have their starting running back coming back. They have their starting quarterback coming back. They've got most of their line coming back. They've got a lot of pieces to the puzzle that are going to be coming back. And listen, with Grady Bennett as the head coach, Glacier is a team that you just do not sleep on. They are a tough football team. It doesn't matter if you're the Billings Wests or the Bozeman's or the top team in the league that year. You don't bring your A game against Glacier, all of a sudden Glacier will put 35 on you. So for me, I think this year, I think it's going to be a good football game, but I think the tilt might be just a little bit in Glacier's favor, just because of looking at right now on paper what Glacier has coming back. It always helps when you've got your quarterback coming back, and a sophomore last year, a junior this year, and a running back that rushed for over 1,000 yards. I think Glacier's, if you got a running game in high school football, you're at least competitive in every football game you play. So I think Glacier this year is going to be a good football team.
The biggest thing that I've seen, which needed to be done for a long time, is the remodel of that football stadium down there.
Mm-hmm.
And now that there's an actual decent turf on there,
Yeah.
I mean, it looks a whole lot different. The scoreboard over the years has been changed. Do you think that since there's 2 high schools, now that there's a lot more of a fan base, especially, do you think there's going to be a future for more seats?
I would certainly hope so. I don't want to say it's like it's over capacity now, but I think again, Kalispell continues to grow, which is good. I think, for one thing, we put it to you this way: as a broadcaster, that press box needs an upgrade. I'm just saying that. I'm kind of selfish in that regard a little bit.
It is small.
Use some seating. Well, I mean, I'll say this: Legends press box is not nearly as bad as some of the others in the state. So I will not complain too much, but I will say I just wish that with Legends, the window could be opened, or that, we could, one of the hardest things is like, the bathroom's so far away. So you really got to be on your water management during a broadcast. So it would be just cool to upgrade the facility, make it maybe 2 stories, allow for a bigger window. Cause like I said, the window that I have, you still I have to lean over a little bit to be able to see the entire red zone at the north end of the stadium. And, it just doesn't give you that full view that you wish you could have as a play-by-play guy. So, I mean, I'd love to see the stadium get an upgrade. I'd love to see them get more of an upgrade on the other side of the field. They've put more stands over there, which is fantastic. I don't see why they won't. I think it'll happen eventually, just not right now. But I'd love to see that press box upgraded, man. It'd be fantastic if it was.
the stands on the other side, that's always been my deal, because back in the day, that's where the junior high would sit. So
Mm-hmm.
you weren't even sitting with your side of the field. You would be on the opponent's side, which
As a fan,
was okay because we would yell behind them and give them a hard time. But
I was about to say that's interesting because they've changed that now. So now the home side is the fan side. So I think actually, and I don't know what it was like for you when you were playing, but now the only stadium where it's like that is Butte, and Butte is like that now, which has drawn complaints from everybody that's not a Butte fan.
well, no, the normal high school side was on the home side, but the junior high, the Kalispell Middle School, was on the other side of the field because we couldn't fit.
Gotcha.
So it was kind of like, we can't be with the rest of our school. And if you're a freshman, you want to be with your high school. But the smaller seats, I've always dreamed of seeing kind of like how Montana State used to be, with both sides of the field having big seats and then open ends. I think that it could be filled. And and I think back in the day, the University of Montana would have preseason practices at the field. I mean, you could fill that place easily and have a game or 2 there.
I would agree. Like I said, I think if it would be, like I said, they just poured that money into that field, because I'm sure you remember how that thing used to have a nice little curve to it by the middle.
Oh yeah.
And then the end zones were always uneven too. I'm glad that I think the stands are next. I think the press box is next. But I think for now, I think they're just going to hang tight with what it is. Again, I think, one of the other things they got to figure out is parking, because it's all residential neighborhood over there. I mean, I even know the high school just itself, they have a trouble parking for the students. So, I mean, that on a Friday night, I got to get to that game and get to the stadium by 4:00. That way I have a parking spot where I don't have to walk 20 minutes.
Now, this one might be a touchy subject for you.
Yeah.
I think it was this past year or the year before, you made a big statement on your broadcast during the state football game about having a change of where the playoffs and championship would be.
Yeah.
pretty adamant on that, and I'll never forget that broadcast because you said this needs to change. This needs to change, and I want to know, are you still feeling that way? Because I agree with you. To go all the way to Billings, it just doesn't make sense, especially if there's snowstorms like there was, I believe at that time. I think that it should move around from school to school, kind of like with the NFL. It doesn't, the Super Bowl ain't at the same spot every year.
I think what would be fantastic, and I'm still on that. The interesting part about it is like I said, I've talked to a couple high school coaches, and those are the people you got to try and change their mind on this. They're still in favor of it, and that's fine. If you can get the home game, great. And tons of credit to Billings West that year for what they did and being well, they weren't the number one overall seed, they were the number 2 seed behind Bozeman that year. But I just look at it and go, you got to play that game it would be great if they played it as a neutral site. Now, again, if they didn't want to play it in Bozeman, or if they didn't want to play it in Missoula, because like I've heard, there's a lot of theories. You could play it, away from where the game's happening for the Brawl of the Wild, because the state title game is always that same weekend. All the state championship games are the same weekend as the Brawl of the Wild, which I think really needs to change too. But either way, I think either you put the game at the other place where the game's not being played, or I say since the AA is the only one that plays on Friday night for their state championship game, play it there. Play it at the same place as where the Brawl of the Wild's going to happen the next day. You can pack that place. You're telling me that all the fans, whether it's Missoula, whether it's Bozeman, you're telling me all the fans that go there and go stay in those hotels on a Friday night won't go to a high school football game, because a lot of football players that are playing in that game from Montana are usually playing on a Friday night in that game. So, I mean, I just look at it and go, why don't we just do that? At the same time, like, okay, there are a couple of really nice NAIA facilities for high school football. So if you don't want to play it at Montana or Montana State, you really want to kind of play it more neutral, play it at Montana Tech, play it at Carroll. I know Carroll doesn't have a turf field yet, but you can play it at Tech. I think you can play it. I'm trying to think here. Probably wouldn't play it at Western just because Western's way out of the way. But you can play it, in Rockies all the way in Billings. But Carroll, Tech would be a good one. Like I said, I just think it'd be great to kind of play it at a neutral site and play it at a college stadium, because I think that's what a lot of other states do. When I was in Florida, It rotated between Gainesville and Tallahassee and Miami, and then they fixed on it in the Citrus Bowl, where there was no college football team. Everybody used that facility. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm still very much on this. Let's play this game at neutral site.
When I lived in New England, all the high school state championship games were played at the Patriots, at the stadium there. And that place, yes, it wouldn't get full. But what I was about to say, like you did, play it in the college stadiums. Play it wherever, like your idea. If it's at Missoula for the Brawl of the Wild, have it there. If it's the next year at the other, play it there. It's all revenue. And it gives the kids the experience that, hey, I'm playing on the same field as my favorite former Grizz player this, my favorite Grizz player that. I mean,
exactly.
It gives them that sense of, I might not get to play again. Well, I might not get to go play on that type of level of field. And here they get to play on it, and it gives them that satisfaction.
Well, I agree. And again, I think the other part of it is too, and again, this is going to go back to a little bit more of a selfish reason as a broadcaster, but it's not even just for me. I think, unfortunately, for a lot of these high school stadiums, they were built when there wasn't a lot of media. You'd have a hometown radio crew, your local TV guy would be down there, and your local newspaper writer would be in the press box, and that was it. And maybe you'd have a coach or two up in the box. Now that's a different ballgame. Like, offense and defense, they needed their own room, because you got two guys in a room. You got the public address announcer. You've got the clock keeper. You got the official that's keeping track of all things. You've got other media here. It's not just like I go on the road. I'm one of the few that go on the road. I got to share space with a whole desk. Like, I remember I did a game. I was on the right side, or the north end zone, north side of the press box. There was the newspaper. There was the TV guy. There was the other newspaper, and then there was the other radio team as well. And like that's the thing. And when you're talking about a state title game, how much media coverage there is for that, just
Yeah.
on top of just the other towns that are interested. They just don't have the capacity to hold everybody. And I think if you take it to one of these places, one, they're going to have the accommodations for media, and two, you're going to be able to, like you talked about, give these kids that opportunity to play on one of the coolest stadiums. Like, Flathead, during their state championship run, they played at Washington Grizzly twice. They played Sentinel at Washington Grizzly, and they played against Hellgate at Washington Grizzly. And yeah, maybe the stadium wasn't full like it was on a college football Saturday. But I'll tell you what, there's still plenty of fans. You don't have to show the upper deck; just show where the fans are. That's
Yeah.
easy to do with a camera.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. I was hoping to talk about all the sports quickly, but I'm glad we talked about football because I think that's what's everybody is on their mind right now is this football season.
Yes.
And I'm excited. I'm really excited about not only to see what comes with Flathead and Glacier, but also I like hearing about Whitefish, Columbia Falls, Big Fork, man. They've been, Big Fork used to be an afterthought for football, but just recently their sports program, basketball included, it's been pretty impressive. And I'm looking for that.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think when you look at the cool part about all three of them is when you talk about them getting ready, all of them have quarterbacks that are coming back. You're talking about a Big Fork. Patrick Whalen started as a freshman last year, going to be back this year with more experience. You talk about, or I'm sorry, no, he was a sophomore, my bad. He'll be a junior. Finn Ridgway was a freshman that started at Whitefish last year, got the Bulldogs back to the playoffs. And because Whitefish is only, 5 years removed from winning a state championship in the A. So, I mean, Finn Ridgway is going to be an exciting quarterback. You look at what Columbia Falls has in Mason Peters. Columbia Falls has won a state championship recently, and they've been in that conversation as an elite program in the A. So I look at all of them. They're fun. Like you look at Eureka, who's won 3 out of the last 4 Class B state championships up there. They've been terrific. And there's no reason to think. I remember the year they didn't win it, they were a really good football team, but they had injuries. So I'm very curious. Had they had their, I mean, you talk about a Class B school, you lose some of your studs. You just don't have the numbers there to really be able to withstand that. And that kind of unfortunately happened at Eureka. But could Eureka have won 4 straight with the players that they had? There's just a lot of really, really great football programs and a lot of really great players I can't wait to see play. But yeah, like you said, I mean, Big Fork's going to be good. I think Columbia Falls is going to be back to being good. Whitefish isn't going to go anywhere. Like I said, I'm really excited, and I'm really, really hopeful that we will get a high school football season. I think we will. College football, I'm a little more hesitant about just because of all the out-of-state travel. But as long as we're traveling in-state for high school football, I think we can get a season.
Do you think if it's not, but they will allow a football season but have empty stadium, do you think that TV and radio coverage will be more expected, or is that even an option?
I think as a radio guy, I know we will have it. So obviously, I would hope that everybody would tune in and watch. I think for a lot of people, I'm curious to see what they would do. The NFHS has the exclusive rights to high school games. So it's not like you can just, watch your local favorite. You can't watch Flathead on the local ABC or Fox or CBS or NBC channel. You got to watch it through the NFHS. So I think, I don't think it would expand in TV. At least I don't think it would. Maybe it could. I don't know. But I think at least in terms of radio, I think radio becomes, if they don't allow fans, I think radio then becomes really, really important at that particular time.
Now, before we got on here, we were talking about how I got started and how you got started. For one, basketball is fairly easy to announce because it's right side, left side, near side, far side,
Right.
and in the key, out of the key, below the key, whatever, layup. For football, to me, that always seems more of a challenge to call. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what is it to you? Because what's your strategy when you're announcing? Because it takes a lot to get fans to be attached, like we talked about before coming here with Mick calling games. You have to really have that great personality. How do you do it with your broadcast? Because I love listening to you call football games because you're good. You're good.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think for me, and a lot of people have said this and made this comment, is it just feels like, for them, they feel the passion. And that's what it is for me. I mean, I'll tell you what, like, I love nothing more than the feeling of game day and preparing for a broadcast, whether it be basketball, football. Just did some baseball a couple weeks ago for the local Legion teams. Just nothing is more exciting, and I think that's the thing for me, is it's just so much fun, and that's where the passion really comes out. I think that's the biggest key, is like, if you're doing this, and you and I both know this, we're not in for the money. We're doing it for the passion. We do it because we love it. We do it because this is an opportunity for us to have some fun on a Friday night or a Thursday night or whatever it may be. So for me, that's the first thing. I think secondly, I've done some homework, and I think pinpointing is so key. Like you talked about with basketball, you can kind of do that. There's certain areas that are, like you talked about at the key. You look at, okay, free throw line, in the paint, blocks. There are already words that describe certain areas of the court that fans know. And if you don't know, you've seen a basketball court, you kind of get an idea. Okay, hey, where's that painted area? You know that. With football, it's always, okay, the hash marks, the yard lines are always really important. But at the same time, okay, are you going left? Are you going right? Are you coming near side? Are you going far side? I think.
Are you in the middle of the field? Are you
right
closer to the fan? Like, where are you at?
Exactly. And that's something that I continue to struggle with. I mean, it was funny. Like, I consistently try and listen to my own stuff, and I was listening to some of my own calls earlier today, and I'm just thinking to myself, listening back, I'm like, okay, I need to do a better job of pinpointing where the player is. Okay, which direction is the play going? Okay, if it's a toss to the outside, well, outside where? Outside, coming here, coming near me, going away from me, where exactly? And so I think with football, it is a challenge in trying to pinpoint the football. And I think that's what the really good guys do. And I think that's really important. But at the same time, the energy is a big part of it. I think, when you talk about it, Mick, I mean, if you got great energy, and at the same time, if you're not over modulating, like, okay, yeah, listen, I love some great calls, but I just think don't be a screamer. Like, if you can do it with high energy, but at the same time, your listener can hear it and hear what you're saying and be able to understand it, that's even better, because then they know that, okay, hey, this is really exciting.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask you two questions here.
Okay.
Kind of a fast shoot question, I guess. Best call of a game that you ever had, and the most embarrassing call that you've ever made on air. So let's hear these.
My best call, I would say, is the 4th down stop against Bozeman in the state semifinal, as the Hawks are driving. They're in Flathead territory. It's like 4th and 4. Quarterback takes off. I never see where the defender comes from, but all I know is Paxton Boyce makes the tackle. Quarterback stops short. Flathead is going to run out the clock, and they're going to win. And my favorite part is just as he trips up, Flathead makes the 4th down stop. Put it in the bag. The Braves are going to the state title game for the first time since 2000, looking for a state championship victory next Friday. And that was, to me, I felt like one of my best calls. I love that one. Most embarrassing call, I would have to say, and unfortunately I still make the mistake sometimes, but most embarrassing is sometimes when I'm trying to describe what happens when a player goes in the air. I go back a couple of years ago. Tyler Johnson used to just hang in the air. Like, that kid it felt like his hang time was 5 or 6 seconds. And I remember trying to describe what it was like for him to be in the air. And I was trying to find a whole bunch of different words, and just like sky air was what came out, and it didn't make any sense at all. and just trying to make sense of that play. It literally felt like word vomit just came out of me. Because I couldn't come up. I had so many words I was trying to come up with. So I would say that's probably been one of my most embarrassing calls. Is I just remember one play. I think it was the hell in a game. They were getting ready to go to the state tournament. He makes a drive to the basket and just word vomit comes out. It was guy here, roll off, finger, whatever. I couldn't put all the words together in the correct sentence.
For those of you that have a passion for sports and who have thought about wanting to be a sportscaster. I see a lot of commercials for Full Sail. I'm sure you've heard of Full Sail down in Florida. But a lot of people can't afford to go to school or for college. I know there's some people who are lucky and get that foot in the door and get on radio and stuff like that. But for me, it was doing simple recordings at 8th grade basketball games and just learning from family or family friends and stuff like that. What is your advice to that person that's watching this right now that wants to get into broadcasting, get their foot in the door, and really get that right first step going?
I think the first step's passion. You got to have it. There's got to be a desire there. I think that's the first step in anything that you want to do and be successful at. And I think you got to have you've got to be flexible. You got to be versatile. There's a lot of different ways to go. I kind of think back to my journey. I've noticed that, at the same time, I kind of wish, maybe I had gone to a school with some broadcast school to kind of get more experience to kind of understand some things a little bit more.